Ready. All right. Welcome, everybody. We are going to open the regular city council meeting of August 8th, 2023 at 6:03 p.m. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and Michael Black will lead us in the pledge this evening.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Michael. All right, our first item of business is a update on the sustainability plan. This is a workshop, so we'll take questions from the council. There'll be no public comment at this time. And we have the consultant here, Alexi will introduce, and we'll just move right into that agenda item.
Great. Thank you. And today we have Imogen and Shelby with us from Brundle Group. They're consultants for the sustainability plan, and we'd like to get some feedback on that as we're starting to move into getting doing work with our technical advisory committees and starting to think more about community engagement. Go ahead and we can start. Sure. Yeah.
Right, so I'll share my screen here.
I think we met you on Zoom.
Yes.
Yes.
We did. All right. There we go. So my name's Imogen Ainsworth, and I'm a consultant with Brundle Group, and here to provide an update and kind of introduce the sustainability action plan. So we'll introduce the plan and reflect on the work that's happened so far, confirm our cross-cutting priorities and focus areas, and we'll preview some goal and strategy development kind of through a recap of the Technical Advisory Committee meeting. So we had a session with the Technical Advisory Committee earlier today and have summarized some of that input for tonight. And then finally, we'll summarize next steps and prepare to engage the community, looking ahead to community engagement over the next couple of months. So this is our team. As I mentioned, I'm Imogen Ainsworth. Shelby is here tonight as well. And then others on our team, Rebecca, Grace, and Kat, are supporting the project from a technical and engagement perspective back in Colorado. And then for the city project management team, we've been working with Alexi as the project manager on the city side. And then there's other members of city staff who've been involved in that project management team and kind of helping to guide this project. I'll hand it to Alexi to describe why we're doing it.
Okay, I think you're largely familiar because you've been involved as we've launched this process, but as a recap, to follow up on our goals of 100% renewable electricity by 2030 and 80% emission reductions by 2040, we've undertaken this sustainability action plan with the idea of collaborating and engaging with the community, empowering our community to achieve some of those goals, and to also build on previous planning efforts for kind of a unified path forward. The current sustainability action plan is set to develop goals and strategies that we can actually act upon, and looking towards sort of the near future out to like 2030. We've met with the Technical Advisory Committee. We can go to the next slide.
That list is actually
okay.
done. Yeah.
Okay. So we've also been working to look at where the Technical Advisory Committee and the meetings with them today and the kickoff before, and we have another one planned coming later in the process. Yeah, the timeline. Yeah. So we are in August. Following the two technical advisory committees, we're checking in here today, going into the community engagement piece of this, and then trying to develop a plan that people can review, give comments, and also have the second technical advisory committee third technical advisory committee meeting actually is in October on the 2nd. So at the beginning of the month, which will give some time to put together that reviewable draft and have it in a final draft by the time we get into December, so that this would be wrapped up by the end of the year.
Thank you. And this is just a preview of where we will be by the end of the year. So the deliverables that we'll have for you by December is first a sustainability action plan. So this will be a fairly concise document that's designed to be engaging, to be shared with the community. Hope that it will be visually attractive and digitally accessible, so that's something that kind of everyone can engage with and look at to see where Moab is going from a sustainability perspective. The second piece is this strategy register and tracking tool. So this will be a spreadsheet that will document all the strategies that were considered as part of this plan process. So not just the ones that rose to the top for kind of immediate implementation, but everything that we talked about, as well as a tool for tracking progress over time. So the hope is that this can be something that the city can revisit over time, maybe looking at kind of future strategies, looking at things that didn't move forward immediately, but could be slated for future implementation, as well as kind of use on an ongoing basis to track progress for each of the strategies. And then the final deliverable is this work plan template, and we will build that out for 6 priority strategies. And so that will be a deeper dive into the 6 strategies that kind of rise to the top for near-term implementation. And that will have things like kind of key action steps, roles and responsibilities, possible resources that the city could leverage to implement those 6 strategies. On this slide is just a preview of what the Sustainability Action Plan framework will look like. And it's also kind of a guidepost for today, what I'll talk through as far as the components of the Sustainability Action Plan. So we start with a vision at the top. This is the North Star, kind of that overarching vision statement to guide Moab's Sustainability Action Plan. Underneath that, we have cross-cutting considerations. These are things that we've heard from the community that are important to bear in mind kind of throughout the implementation of the plan and throughout the identification of strategies, things that cross across all of the sustainability topic areas rather than just fitting within one. The focus areas are those topic areas. So these are kind of themes or topics that are used to organize the sustainability work and to organize the sustainability plan. And then finally, goals and strategies. So thinking about what we're trying to achieve in each of the focus areas, and then zooming in on strategies, so specific projects and programs and initiatives that the city and the community can pursue in support of that sustainability vision and goals. We'll talk about the vision. So vision statement, I mentioned, is kind of that North Star for the planning process. It's an expression of the city and the community's shared intention, kind of setting that intention at the beginning of the plan, setting that sort of North Star of where we're trying to get to. And the vision may align with other statements or concepts that the city's developed. So we know that the city already has a number of kind of vision or guiding documents. And so the vision for this plan and the kind of goals as well, sort of drawing on existing efforts that have been done in the community as well. So in developing the vision statement, we started with city staff input through working with Alexi and with that project management team. We received input from the technical advisory committee during our initial kickoff meeting, and also drew on some of those existing community vision concepts. Then today we took a draft vision statement to the technical advisory committee and received some additional input from them. So what you're seeing today is even a 2.0 from what we brought to the technical advisory committee earlier today. So done some kind of revisions to incorporate some feedback from that group. And then from today, we'll present that. And from today's meeting, we'll then take that and collect community input on the vision statement as well. So even today, it's not a sort of finished statement at this point. We'll continue to work to integrate input from the community in order to finalize the vision statement that will appear in the final plan document. These are just some of the concepts that we heard so far from the project management team and the technical advisory committee. You can see community, the biggest word on this. So this is how kind of size is reflective of how frequently these words came up. And we heard loud and clear that community and sort of that local residents, local people is an important part of the vision for this plan. Similarly, concepts around kind of actionability of the plan. How can we actually move forward and implement it? Buy-in, kind of getting community buy-in and contribution to the plan, making sure that it's inclusive. And so using these words and then also the input we received today, we have this draft sustainability plan vision statement. And so that is that Moab aspires to be a thriving, resilient and equitable community with a robust economy and a healthy natural environment. This sustainability action plan will guide community collaboration on action steps toward our sustainability vision. We commit to inclusive implementation and to transparently sharing our progress. So it's sort of this overarching guiding statement, and then a little bit of the how or the values that will help to guide that process. Next to the goals and strategies. So I mentioned these cross-cutting considerations. And again, these are things that have sort of emerged through the planning process as concepts that are important to the community to have in mind as we develop the strategies and the goals. So the first is economy, thinking about economic diversification, sustainable tourism and workforce development. For well-being, it's concepts like happiness, health, and a strong social fabric. Social equity and inclusion. So we talked about prioritizing underserved groups and how to kind of have that at front and center through the strategies, and affordability as part of that. Natural environments, making the connection both to the greenhouse gas emissions goals and renewable electricity goals that exist, but also to natural landscapes, to kind of the scenic and resources of the community and preserving natural landscapes for their own benefit. And then finally to local benefits, so taking a local first approach, prioritizing local residents and that community connection throughout the plan. So then these are our sustainability focus areas. So kind of that next layer on the framework that I presented a few slides earlier. So these are ecosystems and air quality, energy and buildings, land use and planning, transportation, materials management, and water. So these serve really as the kind of the organizing themes or buckets for the strategies and goals in the plan. The next layer under that is goals and metrics. So within each of the focus areas, we will have goals and we will have metrics. So when we say goals, we're talking about our objectives, what we're trying to accomplish in each focus area. And then metrics is what we can actually measure to show progress towards those goals. So both of those kind of within each of the topic areas as things to sort of show what we want to do and then how we can actually track that over time to show progress towards the vision. And in the graphic on the right, you'll see that greenhouse gas emissions is in the middle of that. We know that the city already has goals around greenhouse gas emissions and that they're connected really to many of those other topic areas. So not necessarily kind of fitting neatly within one of the buckets. And that's why that kind of came into that cross-cutting considerations piece as well. So the community greenhouse gas emissions goal, a detailed inventory or greenhouse gas emissions analysis isn't part of this project, but we thought it was helpful to share the breakdown of community greenhouse gas emissions as sort of a framing, knowing that this is an important goal for the community, just to help influence the strategies or to kind of inform as a background to the strategies that will move forward through this plan. So we know that the community has a goal to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 80% by 2040, including a reduction of at least 50% by 2032 compared to a 2018 baseline. And the pie chart on the right shows that those big sources of emissions are transportation and mobile sources, and then energy. So you'll see the residential, industrial, and commercial energy. When you kind of put those pieces of the pie together, that's another big contribution to emissions. And I'll note that this is county-wide emissions, not just city limits. And we also know that Moab has a renewable electricity goal that contributes to that greenhouse gas emissions goal. So to have 100% renewable electricity by 2030. Just highlighting that, you know, these are existing goals that are part of the sustainability plan. But yeah, just that those already exist. So then we moved on to strategies. So we see strategies as initiatives, sort of specific projects and programs that the city and community can pursue in support of the sustainability vision and goals. And as I mentioned, for each of the 6 priority strategies, we'll develop action steps, roles, and resources in that work plan. So helping the city to be ready to actually launch implementation once the planning process is finished. And in order to develop the goals and strategies today, with the Technical Advisory Committee, we sort of said, put everything on the table. What are our objectives? What can we measure? What strategies can we pursue in each of the topic areas? We call this phase kind of divergent thinking. And the next phase will be over the next couple of months, we'll take all of that input and we'll take additional input that we'll receive from the community and pull that all together to develop a set of draft goals and a list of prioritized strategies. And then in November, we'll return for a second or third work session with the Technical Advisory Committee to review and refine the plan goals, and then to start developing action plans for those 6 priority strategies. So getting input from those key stakeholders and community members on not just what the strategies are and which ones we want to do in the near term, but also how, who's going to do what do we need to do when. So given that we had the Technical Advisory Committee meeting earlier today, we also wanted to share some of the initial emerging priorities. So we haven't done a deep dive on all of the input that we received, but we have been able to pull out just some emerging priorities as far as goals and strategies from that group earlier today. So I'll go through each of the topic areas and for each just share a few of the goal ideas that have come up and then a few of the strategies that came up. So we asked committee members to provide ideas around what the strategies could be, and then also to do kind of a voting exercise around which of the strategies are rising to the top for them as priorities. So in this energy and buildings focus area, some of the goal ideas that we heard were around energy conservation, so the amount of energy saved, around renewable energy generation, and that could include a local generation component, around energy burden, so kind of accessibility of energy and equity as far as access and kind of the burden that community members are facing from their energy bills. And then green building certification, so the number of buildings that are certified through these green building programs. For strategies, we heard exploring the adoption of a policy or program to encourage green building practices, complete an energy audit of city facilities and implement identified improvements, to create an education campaign to communicate existing opportunities for energy efficiency and renewable generation, so letting people know what already exists, and then building on that to provide incentives for energy efficiency, renewable generation, and electrification for low to moderate income households. For the transportation focus area, some of the goal ideas were electric vehicle adoption and charging. So we could track kind of the percentage electric vehicle adoption and the number of charging stations. Mode share, this concept of a car optional town came up. So how many people are driving compared to biking, taking public transportation, that kind of thing. And working towards this idea of a town where people could drive their car here and then leave it. Miles of connected multimodal infrastructure came up, and then transportation access and safety. For strategies, we had develop a funding and implementation plan for multimodal transportation improvements, install public electric vehicle charging at city facilities, and to create a resident and visitor sustainable transportation education campaign. And the idea behind that was that it could cover both active and shared transportation modes, but also sustainable driving tips as well for both residents and visitors. For materials management, we had goals around reducing waste to landfill, reducing recycling contamination, and improving waste measurement and monitoring. We heard that waste data can be a challenge sometimes, and so including a goal around improving that. The strategy ideas invest in waste audits and scales to help improve that tracking piece. Organic waste pilot program with a focus on restaurants, hospitals, and schools. And then a policy or program to reduce construction and demolition waste is another that rose to the top. For ecosystems and air quality, some of their goal ideas that came up were to preserve green space and habitat, to reduce invasive species, and to enhance the urban nature interface. The strategies, there were two that rose pretty clearly to the top. The first around tree canopy expansion, and the second around purchasing and protecting habitat and green space land. For land use and planning, some of the ideas were around building a complete and equitable community. We had concepts, kind of varying concepts within this, including aging in place, food access, housing opportunities, and density. So thinking of some kind of goal around this complete and equitable community and what that looks like for Moab. And then another was urban agriculture. So the strategies are kind of tied pretty clearly to that. So the first being to promote urban agriculture through codes, programs, and education. Second, to develop and implement sustainable housing development and construction. And that could be kind of through best practices. And then to integrate sustainability considerations into land use decisions. So looking for opportunities to take the vision, take the goals from this plan and integrate them into other decision-making processes throughout the city. I think this is our last one for water. Some of the goals we had were around protect aquifers. So this was one that rose to the top pretty clearly around protecting the water supply and water quality for the community, around healthy streams, rivers, wetlands with ample flows for wildlife and vegetation, and then finally to reduce flood impacts. And for the strategies tied to that, we had nature-based solutions, protecting the quality and quantity of groundwater, developing accessible real-time information on water conditions. So that could include things like early flood warning, water quality and drought, so that information is sort of transparently accessible for community members and the city. And then advanced grey water adoption for new and existing development. We can revisit any of these at the end if it's helpful to. So then lastly, we just wanted to provide sort of an overview and a look ahead to what community outreach and engagement will look like from here on. And so first, just the purpose of community engagement. There's various different reasons why we will engage the community in the plan development. One being to communicate sustainability benefits and information. So it's a way just to raise awareness of sustainability in the community, ensure that the plan reflects local conditions and priorities, to seek input from community members, and ensure that we're getting things right as far as what the local conditions are. Integrate diverse perspectives. So we have many members on the technical advisory committee who are sort of key local experts and stakeholders in this process. The community engagement beyond that will be to integrate diverse perspectives from the community through a variety of different means. And then finally, to build capacity and momentum for change. So hoping that through community engagement, we can kind of build momentum within the community, build a kind of a desire to sort of help with the implementation of the plan and help ensure that it's successful through implementation going forward. So our community engagement approach includes the technical advisory committee. It includes this project summary document and then a community survey and event. So the technical advisory committee, they are subject matter experts. They have been providing insight related to their areas of expertise. We've also asked that they act as community ambassadors, so helping to spread the word about the Sustainability Action Plan in the community and to raise awareness with their networks. And then finally, we've asked that they be local connectors, so supporting engagement with Moab residents and businesses over the next few months as we seek more diverse perspectives. This is a list of everybody who's on the technical advisory committee. I'm not going to read it out. I think you will have the slides after the meeting, but I'll just pause for a second in case it's helpful just to scan through that list. So for the other pieces of the community engagement, this project summary is basically a flyer or a sheet that will be designed to raise awareness of the Sustainability Action Plan process. It will include a QR code and direct community members to take the survey and to attend the community event. We'll make it available in a digital PDF and also a print version that the city can print and kind of use for local engagement at events. We asked the technical advisory committee members, they can take this and kind of help use it to help spread the word in the community and encourage people to take the survey and attend the event in November. The survey, again, will be designed to raise awareness of the Sustainability Action Plan process. It will also be designed to collect broad input to inform the goals and strategies. So we'll be asking for feedback and input on that draft list of goals and strategies. The survey will be available in an online platform and also in a printable version that could be at city facilities or other locations that get a lot of foot traffic. And this will be distributed online and in print from September to October. And then finally, we'll have a community event. So this will be intended to gather input on draft goals, metrics, and strategies to engage community members in sustainability and build momentum for implementation. So designed both to be sort of a celebration of the process and also an opportunity to gather additional input kind of in that latter stages of the plan development. And we're hoping that this will both have sort of an open house component and also interactive or service event component to it. We're still working to figure out exactly what that will look like, but we're looking at November 2nd for that. So for next steps from here, we're here today. We had our in-person technical advisory session. As I mentioned, we'll be doing community engagement via that survey from September to October. In November 2nd, we'll return for that second in-person technical advisory committee work session and also that community event. And then in December, as Alexi mentioned, we'll return with a plan for you, the sustainability action plan. We'll have been working to prepare it over these next few months. I think that's all I have as far as presentation.
We want to ask for feedback on the sections. Would council be interested in giving us some feedback on the sections that we heard about today?
I don't know about everybody else. I always find it a little bit hard to do just off the cuff, but if we could have a copy of the slides and you guys, just give us a deadline for feedback, I think that would be great for me. That's just how I learn, but
Yeah, great.
Questions, council, feedback, comments? Kaylin.
Are we also going to review the high level statement? What, I forget what it's
The
called.
vision statement.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you want to
yes.
do that after the individual topic areas, or you're going to circle back to that?
Want to start?
We can start with the
there.
vision statement.
So this is, okay, so we're sort of getting into wordsmithing, but it seems like our community has been talking about economic diversification for decades, and which it seems like it's a little bit of backlash against, like, we've tended to be a one horse town. And sometimes that horse has changed over time. And so there's a perception, rightly so, of the weaknesses of whatever that is. But we could diversify and still not address the underlying problems. I mean, we could be more diverse and still have just as much inequity and housing problems and potentially lack of economic sustainability. And it seems like the county, through their economic development, has started to get into that. But I'm wondering if there's a better word, like a resilient economy, because it seems like it will be important as part of this plan and resulting effort that the commercial sector really be engaged in solving or working towards our environmental and sustainability goals, and not just the city. And so it's like robust economy is before a healthy natural environment. And in the local dialogue, sometimes quality of life exists along with, or sometimes in opposition to, economic development interests. And so I'd like the economic statement to either be inclusive of that or reflect that, or else like include quality of life, because that's a big issue for a lot of citizens because of the rate of change that we're experiencing. That's my 2 cents on the vision statement.
Yeah, thank you for that. This has been evolving even over today with people adding to it. So comments are welcome, and then there'll be a different iteration. Yeah.
Vision statements tend to be that way.
You do.
I think that's good.
if you could just, if you throw it in with, I mean, when we get the slides, we'll have it. So if you guys are okay with a little bit of feedback after the fact and you can do what you want, but just off the cusp, I would agree with Caitlin, and I would feel more comfortable if, I mean, especially because it's a sustainability plan and that encompasses so many things, but honestly, if the healthy natural environment and the quality of life for community comes before the economic, because honestly, you can't have a good economy without those things, but also I think those things probably kind of come through. And I don't know if we're looking more for a stable economy or stable year-round economy. And I was just talking to someone this week about just the historical boom bust cycles, and that may always recur, but I think that's part of what people are looking for too, is I don't know if they would care if it was diversified, if it was stable. So I don't know. Those are just some ideas.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other comments on the vision statement? Sounds like we'll have some more opportunity to comment.
I have a high level question about these topic areas.
Okay.
So were those solely the suggestions of the TAC? Or to what I mean, it seems like we have our local expertise, but you will be bringing in expertise from working with multiple communities and seeing like what actually works over time, because we have our ideas of what works, but we also like, I think we're open to inspiration about like what is really scalable, because like, especially in terms of climate goals, we have a limited window to avoid the worst case outcomes from climate change. And so, and some things like may not have that much effect, even though they are popular and so I hope your experience will also be reflected in the in the topic areas and what the elements of that are.
Yeah, and I think that the TAC input and also any input here and then from the community is around kind of what are the priorities for the community as much as it is around what are the exact strategies that we can do. So I think we'll take everything that we have and then, yeah, we can help to shape that into what look like actionable strategies for the plan.
Right.
Is it helpful for you guys to have anything on that from us now? Like, I mean, I would think at the 30,000 foot level, for me, I mean, it's very clear, like Caitlin says, we have a limited amount of time. And so far and away above anything else is being aware of where we're going to see the largest impacts to the community in terms of what we know will be coming as changes for the community and where we can either prepare for that or where we can nudge it. So anything rises to the top for me that gives us the biggest bang to protect people's livelihoods and their safety and the ability of our community to stay here over time and also, you know, raise families and thrive. But with the knowledge that things are changing and we have to adapt and prepare. Yeah.
I think this plan can get to some of that, but one strategy that came up, I think it was in the land use and planning, I'm not exactly sure, was around doing a full climate risk and vulnerability study or a separate, you know, full planning effort. So that could also be an action even within this plan that needs further attention.
And as you're kind of developing these proposed strategies to implement some of these plans, like what are some of the guiding things to help kind of narrow down what strategies to propose? Because I'm assuming there's like an innumerable number of ways to go with a lot of these things.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of like you said, kind of using our experience that we've seen in other communities and then figuring out what works specifically here. So I will say in the technical advisory committee meeting, we had pre-populated a few strategy ideas based on what we'd heard as far as priorities and within the topic areas from the kickoff meeting and working with the project management team. And so then I think we can, you know, take all of that input, and our work is to pull it all together and have, you know, just that shorter list of actionable strategies that can be implemented over the next few years.
Yeah, because I was thinking, like, I'm assuming there's probably like certain strategies that if implemented fully can have like a tremendous impact, but like what is the actual likelihood of it being like widely adopted by the community? And I'm sure there's projects within our community members that they're super passionate about, that even though they're really passionate, like the impact itself might not actually be that great, even if it is like fully adopted by the community. And so kind of taking into consideration that we have the limited resource of time and then like staff and kind of community resources, like, yeah, where can we get our best bang for our buck, and kind of most immediate, like positive changes.
Mhm. I think, yeah, that's a really good point. And I think having the community input, the input from the technical advisory committee, who's more kind of subject matter experts, and then working really closely with the city staff as well to figure out what is actually feasible. And we can build that into how the strategies are prioritized as
Yeah.
well.
And I'm assuming there probably isn't, but is there any like repository out there of different actual attempts that have been like implemented in other communities and like their success is just so that, yeah, kind of like not reinventing the wheel and potentially building off of like strengths and weaknesses that they've identified in their implementation strategies.
I don't know if there's a repository. There are like published papers that try to show something to the effect of like, cost of something versus like the impact of it. So we have, I think, some things to draw upon for that. And then there are case studies out there in other communities that are similar to ours that might have similar challenges or resources that we can draw upon. So I think those will go into the strategies that are prioritized, is trying to think about not just in general for any community, but like in our particular community, like these are opportunities that we have or challenges that we particularly are facing. So trying to customize those for us.
Yeah, I was just gonna say along the informal, obviously we want the maybe peer reviewed stuff on the one hand, but in the informal, it does seem like over time, one great resource for us just has been those discussions in Mountain Towns 2030, just because there's so many other communities with similar challenges. So a lot of them have shared their plans and kind of what's working and whatnot. So I guess I always consider them a resource for some of this.
Any other questions, comments, feedback, suggestions?
No, just thank you for working on this. These are like just unbelievably complex issues that are so intertwined with one another. So I'm sure there's a lot of rabbit holes to potentially go down with all of this, but I appreciate all the work that you're doing on that.
You've done a good job. I think this is good work.
So more work to come. Once we have a plan, then we'll start looking at how we can develop policy around those plans. Got a lot of plans with a lot of policy development, so be prepared. For those of us that, that have had kind of a nice, quiet year this year, I think that's all going to change here very soon.
Can I
Yes, Ron.
ask one real quick thing? You can let us know by email, but do you guys happen to know offhand right now, like by when you'd like a little feedback from us, or you can think about it and email us a date, but put it in my homework list.
Not
No.
off the top of my head. Let's follow up when we send.
We'll send the slides out after this
Okay.
and I will give a suggested timeline. But I think since over the next couple months, we are planning on doing a lot of engagement, you should have enough time to give us feedback.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alexi.
you for
Thank
having
you,
us.
guys. Yes. It's great to see this plan coming forward. You know, we've been talking about it for a while.
Yeah.
And thanks, Kaylin, for your support on all this, because I know you're part of the team. All right, moving on to our next portion of the agenda, our business portion. We have number 3, public comments. And this item has been changed from citizens to be heard to public comments because we wanted to make sure that everybody knew that they were invited to make a comment, even if you weren't a citizen of Moab. Is anybody here to make a comment tonight? Okay, we did get one written comment that I thought was important to share. It's from a gal named Sarah. And she wanted to make sure that we wish David Everett a happy birthday. So happy birthday, David, from Sarah. All right, agenda item number 4, department head update. We don't have any department head updates this evening. We have, the next item is consent agenda, 3 items on agenda item number 5. 5.1 is the approval of the appointment of Caroline Conant and Mikhail Layton to the Moab City Planning Commission. I want to talk a little bit about that. Approval of the minutes from July 25th, 2023 regular council meeting, and 5.3 approval of the bills against the city of the Moab in the amount of $725,531.86. So I just wanted to just briefly let you know the process for the planning commission appointments. I believe Caroline and Mikhail are here. Yes, so thank you guys for coming. We had 4 applicants. And I worked with Kaya and Corey to go over those applicants. I interviewed everybody. I do have in your agenda packet that Amy Weiser, who applied, did not return my call, but she did on Friday. But I had already decided on who my recommendations were going to be. So very happy to have these 2 gals on board. I think part of the reason that I picked them, it was because they have some planning experience. And the planning commission is going, as we just talked about, is going to have a lot of work ahead of them. We're looking at revising or rewriting the code revision. That's going to be a lot of work. So I thought it was important to have commissioners that understood planning. So those are my recommendations. And so I'll ask for a motion to approve consent agenda items 5.1, 5.2, and 5.3. Ronnie.
Can I just ask a process question? In the packet, I know we usually just vote on to approve the consent agenda, but in the packet, there's specifically a different motion, a more specific motion, including the term dates for planning commission. So what would you like? Would you just like a motion to approve the consent agenda, or would you like that separated out and us to read the motion written in here for the planning commission members?
I think it's okay. Summer and I to just approve the consent agenda. Summer and I went through, so we know that these terms, they're actually replacement terms. So Summer's job is to kind of keep track of those things. So I think it's fine as long as you guys are aware that one of the applicants, Caroline, is going to have a 2-year term ending in 25. And Mikhail is going to have a 1-year term till 2024.
Okay, I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Motion made by Ronnie. You have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Tani. Any further discussion, Ronnie?
No.
Tani? Anybody else? I'll call for the vote. All in favor of the consent agenda?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Is Jason on?
I am on, and I do approve.
Okay. All right, so motion passes 5-0. All right, moving on to our general business. Item number 6. This is item 6.1, consideration of adoption of resolution 2023, a resolution of the Moab City Council adopting the rules of order and procedure for the city council meetings. And I believe Lisa is also should be on for this item. And just as an introduction, this is actually long overdue. I started working on this basically right after my election. All mayors have the opportunity to revise the rules based on their particular process. And, you know, I was really involved in my facilitating experience was using Robert's Rules of Order, which is pretty thick and pretty complicated. And so we have the opportunity to decide what kind of rules we wanted. And I thought it was important to kind of incorporate some of this, you know, ways that I run meetings, which is through Robert's Rules of Order, and how to simplify that a little bit more. So that's what Lisa and I have been working on over the last year. Kaylin actually brought this to Kaylin and I talked about this when I first came into office and felt like it'd be great if we could make those rules much easier to understand to help facilitate debate and deliberation. We also chose to add a code of conduct involved. You know, we thought it was important for the not only the city council, but our other boards and commissions to understand what we expect in decorum in meetings. And so that's what the code of conduct is about. And I think that's, and so thank you all for your input. I really appreciate this because, you know, someday you may be the mayor and you'll need to use them or modify them. So I really appreciate your input. We got some late input. And so Lisa and I went over that today, and we have list of amendments that we would like based on the input we got from the comments yesterday and today. So we have several different amendments that Lisa's going to review with you all. And then in addition to the code of conduct to make it clear that other commissions and committees may have their own rules and they may have their own codes of conduct, but until they change those, or if they don't, we would like them to utilize the rules that we have in place in the code of conduct. Applies to all of them once it's approved. So Lisa, do you want to take it over from here? We can't hear you. Oh, kind of.
Checked my microphone.
Yeah, you're working now. We can hear you now.
Oh, good. If something goes wrong with the computer, it's definitely going to be me that it happens to for some reason. But we're here. It's a pleasure to work with the mayor and you as city council members on this particular project. As you know, under Utah Code 10.3.606, every city and planning commission must adopt rules of order and procedure. So it's a requirement under the Utah Code. And also, once those are adopted, they have to be available at each meeting and on the website so that citizens have an understanding of the way the meetings will be conducted and what their rights may be, as well as their opportunities to be heard. The gist of this is we went through, I went through other cities. I went through the Moab Cities version, and I looked at a lot of information from David Church as we put this together. Ultimately, it covers the full waterfront, what a quorum is, what you do in a work session, what your public comment period is, what your general meeting procedure is. If you have a consent agenda, regular agenda, the initial presentation procedures, any motions, non-debatable motions, the closed meetings, why you have those, and how voting occurs, and when you can have a reconsideration on a vote, how public hearings should be held, and even it goes so far as to say how minutes can be taken and that they can also be in an electronic version. Where some of these things are new, it's because the code is new, and we are now up to speed with where the code is. And so that's really something that should be rewarding for you to know. I had the opportunity to work with Kaylin months ago, and so in your packet, you have the red line version that incorporates previous comments from Ronnie and Kaylin, and then you have this version in front of you now that shows how those were adopted and then some recent comments. The comments that we've received from Lucas and Ronnie are helpful, and there are some amendments that could be proposed by you as council members. They're technical amendments, nothing truly substantive, but I've prepared a list of those for the mayor, and she has them by email. And after we've reviewed them, you can maybe make a decision on whether or not you want to do them wholesale or by item 1 through. We've got 8 of them, and then 1 amendment to the code of conduct. The first one, well, I wonder if I should proceed with the amendments to it, or if you want to ask questions first before we refine what ultimately this will look like. Does anybody have questions?
Ronnie?
I had a question, Lisa. So we got between 4:30 and 5:15 today, comments from the mayor and from you, and they don't all agree. So I guess my first question is, if they disagree with each other, should we be assuming we're going with yours?
Ronnie, tell me where they don't agree.
Okay. I don't know if it's the best use of time. I mean, you can compare them yourself. Yeah, they're different in places. It'll save time if I don't go through everyone. Yeah.
Why don't you just go ahead and do that so that we have an idea of what you're referring to? Because they may be different but the same.
Okay, let's go through the list. Okay. I'm going to have to go into the document one by one. Here we go. Hold on, I'm gonna have to scroll.
I guess while Ronnie's looking that up, one thing I want to make clear to you guys too is that these aren't amendments to the resolution that was passed in 2018. This is actually a new resolution. So we're not amending anything that was already approved in the past. We're creating something new.
Yeah, that might just help people who are confused about the red line, because the red line wasn't a red line of an older document. It was a red line of a former new draft. Okay, well, we can start with, let's see. 5A. If any member of the public provides comment on a matter that is set for action later on the agenda, the mayor may identify the public comment as part of the record for that agenda, but only at the time set for discussion. Mayor's answer was yes. Your answer was either way, Lisa, but I think the added stuff you added made sense to me, Lisa.
This together, it simply means that the mayor's going to state that there are some public comments that are coming in now, and they pertain to an item on the public hearing. So when that public hearing comes to play in the agenda, those comments will have already been received. That way the commentator doesn't have 2 bites at the apple. They have 1. And it makes the meeting more efficient, and it's more fair to all the other participants. So if they choose to make a public comment at the beginning of the meeting on a public hearing item, they are then going to have that count as their public hearing comment, unless it's something different.
Okay, again, yes, I found that clear, and I was fine with that, but I just wanted to make sure that's the direction you guys wanted to go. Okay, and then there was a comment about, the numerous places in the document where it refers to majority of the council. We know we have places in existing code and also a place in here in, I think, section 12, where we do repeat that a majority is the same as a quorum, which is 3 yes votes to pass. But I noticed, Lisa, you said that perhaps the city code should be amended. And so I did want to address that because those were a little bit different.
I think you raise a really good issue, and it's possible the mayor will want to discuss this as a group collectively.
Yes.
Because it is policy decision, but I do want you all to know that I just before the meeting, I wanted to make sure we're all current on the code. And Utah code in the last session was amended. And under section 10.3.507, it now says a minimum vote required to take action by the council unless otherwise prescribed by law is a majority of the voting members of the council, regardless of absence or vacancy. So there's that answer. That means regardless of who's there, you have to have a vote of 3.
So this was an item I think I talked to you all about that we may want to have further discussion, but it sounds like state code has changed and made it clear that we have to have 3.
Yes. Now another question. Go ahead.
Yep.
Another question with regard to that is still the city code defines what a majority is and what a quorum is, and it could be clearer. We're not doing it in the rules of procedure, but that's possibly something that should be done, is so that people aren't confused on what a majority is and what a quorum is. For some reason, that seems to be a recurrent theme for people who are new to councils or new to planning commissions, and we certainly could make that more understandable both for the participants and for the public. The other thing is that an ordinance that can have fewer than favorable vote cannot have fewer than those favorable votes than 3, except a motion to adjourn. And it says in Utah code now 2 people can vote on a motion to adjourn. And really, it's motion to adjourn, second, it happens. But you don't have to have a majority vote of 3 to adjourn the meeting. And that's not in Utah code.
And I think you mentioned in your comments on that, Lisa, that it might, because I had asked about what happens in a situation where one person motions to adjourn and one agrees. And, you would think reading that you automatically adjourn, but, there are 3 other members and they might not want to adjourn. And so I think you did address in your comments what happens there. And I would think it would be good to put that in the procedures.
What I have respond to that is that if a motion to adjourn is successful and there is a city council member, let's say, who wasn't paying attention or suddenly thinks, you know what, I really want to go back and consider this item, they can say, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion so that we can reconsider at this moment the motion to adjourn. And then if somebody says second, you vote, you're back into the meeting. You're back into the open session of the meeting.
Yeah, so I appreciated what you wrote here, and I would just hope that that could be added because we don't have that addressed right now.
Has that ever happened? We ever had a motion to adjourn that nobody wanted to get done with the meeting?
I think the whole larger question that needs to be asked is a lot of this looks harmless and good, which is great, but you always have to think about, as you just learn this over time, is you have to think about the situation you're going through now, but the situation that you could have. And I think we
Right.
look across our country and we see a lot of instances. So you certainly could have a situation where someone motioned to adjourn and someone quickly said, yes, let's adjourn. And the other council members might not want to. So it does help for them to understand what the procedure is then. It just helps to understand, oh, okay, the meeting's already, over because somebody squeaked an adjourn in and somebody approved. Crap, we're done. So it helps people to understand, oh, well, if three of us aren't done, this is what we do.
It's inherent in your ability to make motions, right? So there's all kinds of scenarios where you guys might be strategic in how you make motions. And I think someone can make a motion and someone can also always make a different motion at the time. And that would be true for a motion to adjourn too.
And for me, if that would happen, I would just do a roll call vote. And if we had 4 members saying we adjourn, we adjourn. And it doesn't matter what one person doesn't want to.
No, I think you don't understand. Like one person says, I motion to adjourn. A second person said, okay, let's adjourn. The way it's written, kind of a new council could interpret this as, oh, okay, the meeting's over. Nobody can question that. Whereas I think the language that Lisa added, I'm suggesting does go in the document because that helps people understand, oh, okay, if the other 3 people didn't want that and they just weren't fast enough, then that there is an option to reconvene the meeting.
If you guys want to outline strategy that specifically, you can.
Right.
It's true.
That's, you guys decide if you want to include that.
A motion to adjourn is a non-debatable motion. So that is why it gets a little dicey, because if somebody makes a motion, there's no debate, there's a second and there's a vote. And so Ronnie raises a good point, is that if the meeting really isn't, if there a majority that doesn't want that to happen, right? You could say, I'd like to make a motion to reconsider the vote on the motion to adjourn. That is a debatable motion.
Mm-hmm.
And you make that vote and then you say, okay, let's talk about it. What do we want to discuss? Okay, we're not going to adjourn. We're going to go back to a particular action item or a discussion item. And it's fine. It's that the reason that the motion to adjourn is non-debatable is you want finality. And in some instances in city councils, they go on for hours, midnight, 1. And somebody finally has to say, it's time, we got to call it, right? And so that's why there is that whole option. But on the other hand, if the discussion is being curtailed by a minority and the majority wants it to keep going, there are alternative ways. And if you want to say, I could put motion to reconsider, if a motion to adjourn is made and someone makes a motion to reconsider, it may be considered. The motion to reconsider can be considered and discussed about the adjournment. Okay, I can do it a lot more elegantly than I just spoke it, but there's a way that we can address that.
I thought it was good in the comments that you wrote. Yeah.
Okay.
So the next item that seemed to have just needed to be pointed out was, we had in the draft item 8.3, final action may be taken on any item that's in the open meeting and on the agenda. And I had pointed out, well, does that mean that an item that's on the agenda for discussion only, or it's not stated that it's there for discussion only, could then possibly be voted on for action? We had a time when we started on council where we had agendas and agenda summaries that were more like the counties, and they specifically stated, okay, this item is before you for discussion. This item is before you for discussion and possible action, and that's kind of disappeared or been inconsistent. And so I was just going to bring up, because I don't know if everybody's had a chance to read these, that I appreciated Lisa's suggestion that it does need to be on the agenda if something's for discussion only. I think that would help people. But I mean, ultimately, I think it would be great if everything before us just reminded people if it was an action item or just a discussion item, only because
So Ronnie, can we like just focus on the items that you said Lisa
Yeah.
and I disagreed with?
that was one. Yeah.
I don't think so. I think we both agreed on that one. I think we both agreed that that we could put an agenda item under discussion only.
And then let's see. Can you just clarify? I think just because it wasn't clear to me, on 9.4, I know it was written that it would be amended, but it's not clear to me. I guess part of this is, are we, going to table this until the next meeting so we have a clean copy to read since there are amendments? Or if we're being asked for it tonight, then I need someone to clarify to me what 9.4 is going to turn into.
Okay, so at page 4, subsection 9A, you pointed out the language there under 9A and B talks about pulling an item off of the agenda. It really does fit more appropriately under subsection 8. So what will happen is that we will move items A and B under subsection 8 and renumber them L and M, because the item just in front of that was 8K. So then subsection 9 will simply read initial presentation procedures, which is right, just that one section.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah,
Let's see. Then I assume I'm also allowed to ask about things that aren't clear to me or
sure.
not.
Oh, I don't know. If things aren't clear to you though, and you're going to have to vote, that's fine. You can ask. It's up to the mayor.
Can I ask about an item that's unclear to me? Because I assume if it's unclear to me, it will be unclear to other
Well,
people reading this.
Well, because I think we addressed this when we responded to your comments, and the items that we have before us are the amendments that we haven't even got to yet that may answer some of the questions that you're not clear about. And so I think I'd like to ask Lisa to, I mean, unless you have other items
Oh,
that she and I disagreed
I
on.
think I do.
Or that
Hold
were
on.
not really
Yeah.
succinct, which I think they pretty much are because we talked about it before. I think
Yeah,
she might have
one
had
sec.
some legal ease additions.
Yes.
Yes, Kaylin?
Can I circle back to the adjourning question?
Sure.
So is the Utah code in question 10-3-507?
Correct.
So it seems like it's 2B, which
Correct.
says a council meeting may be adjourned to a specific time by a majority vote of the council, even though the majority vote is less than that required in this section.
That's
So
right.
that means that if all 5 normally voting council members are present, it would require 3 to vote in favor.
No, we required 2, even less than a majority. In other words, 2 votes always can let you adjourn.
But
Or
it
adjourn.
says a council meeting may be adjourned to a specific time by a majority vote of the council. So it seems like even though the majority vote is less than that required. I'm
Oh,
confused.
you know what? You're making a good point, and I didn't read it closely enough. It may be adjourned to a specific time, meaning in the meeting. We're going to take an adjournment for 20 minutes.
Oh,
That's what that one meant. By a majority vote of the council, even though the majority vote is less than that was required, less than 3. So that is an adjournment during the meeting.
right. But the majority vote required in this section is a majority of the full council. And so does this mean that if there's less than the full council present, so say if there's, in this case, if there were 3 council members present, 2 of them could vote to adjourn to a specific time. But if 5 were present, it would, or 4 were present, it would still require 3. Is
Well,
that what?
It says, except notwithstanding 2A. So council may be adjourned to a specific time by a majority vote of the council, even though the majority vote is less than required in this section. So if it's 3 people there and the majority vote, it's almost like it's a quorum, 2 to 1.
Mhm.
That's how that seems to happen. Mike,
But if-
you
but
see
if the
that?
full- But if the full council is present, then 3 is still required to create a majority.
But if you don't have a full council present, you have a quorum. 2 of those people in that quorum can adjourn a meeting.
Yeah. But it seems like our rules of conduct seem to say that in any case, 2 could adjourn the meeting. Is that
It-
correct?
We saw that until we saw that the amendment had been, the code had been amended. And so we will have to address that. It's still a motion to adjourn is a motion and a majority vote. But it can be by 2.
I guess it's a little confusing, because what I hear you saying is that what we're saying right now is a vote to pass any item needs to be 3 people.
Correct.
And then this particular item, when we go to adjourn, I mean, a full adjournment, like we do at the end of every meeting, only requires a motion and a second.
Correct.
Lisa, I guess, is saying, and is that if we have an adjournment in the middle of the meeting, then we really only need a majority of whoever's present.
Right.
So 2 out of 3, if
Right.
it's 2 to 4.
Yes.
So is that clear? I mean, I'm not sure if that's clear in here, if we need to
Right.
clarify. that.
Well,
It's unclear in the
it
state code.
seems like taking.
Oh, that's true. It's the state code is what makes it unclear, I think.
Right, but now I'm unclear as to, like, if you're adjourning the meeting for the evening,
As opposed to adjourning the meeting in the middle
yes,
of the meeting.
as opposed to taking a break.
That's what
That's
it
more
sounds
like that's more like a recess.
an intermission.
Right,
Right.
but so I'm unclear if a full adjournment isn't addressed in 10.3.507, and so by default, does it require 3 votes, regardless of how many members are present?
Do you understand the question, Lisa? Keelan's point is, are we required to use 3?
Because that's
Because
what
of the
our,
state code.
no, because of our code. I mean, that's what our code says, right? And state code. Apparently. Looks like Nathan's jumped in. Nathan, do you have anything you'd like to add here?
Yeah, I just want to bring in some insight from some other places. I agree with Lisa's interpretation. I mean, the operative language in 10.3.507 is sub 1. And that's the part where it says you have to have a minimum you have to have a majority of the council, even if those folks aren't present. That's the standard requirement. This section is an exception to that. But I think with respect to the specific questions you're asking now, I think it says it could be adjourned to a specific time by a majority vote. And where I'm seeing this interpreted elsewhere is that could be the end of your meeting. You could say, hey, it's, you get to the end of your agenda and you say, hey, it's 7:30. I move to adjourn. And so I don't necessarily think that this is limited to, kind of cutting the meeting off, because otherwise, what happens if you have a quorum and you just conduct business, you don't act on anything, but you discuss things, you can't adjourn otherwise.
Right.
And so
Right.
it has to be what Lisa is saying, which is it's an exception to that standard rule. So yes, so if you only had 3 people, you have a quorum to meet and discuss things. You wouldn't have a quorum to vote on everything, but you could just adjourn a meeting with 2 votes.
Okay. So if I understand, like, the distinction is basically if we are actually voting on something, like at minimum, like any sort of like resolution or ordinance or anything like that, there needs to be a minimum of 3 votes, regardless of how many council members are in attendance. If we're
Right.
voting on an adjournment, then it just has to be a majority. So if there's 4, it has to be 3. If there's 3, it has to be 2. If it's 5, it has to be 3, correct?
That's
Yeah.
right. And
That's
the
not what-
statute is clear in 2A that if you have an ordinance, a resolution, or a motion that has fewer than whatever the majority of the total council is, that motion fails.
Fails. It's
So,
deficient and invalid is the wording in the code now.
So the first version of this in our packet that doesn't have red lines is what we're voting on at this time?
No, we have some amendments.
Okay, and do any of the amendments address
That,
paragraph 19?
no.
Okay, so as currently stated, it says the city council may vote to adjourn the meeting by motion and a second without hearing all matters on the agenda. Only 2 council members are required to approve the motion. So that seems to contradict state law, which still requires a majority. So if there's 5 of us or 4 of us, a majority is 3.
I
And
would,
as written, it seems like 2 of us could, like if this were adopted, 2 of us could adjourn the meeting
Mhm.
now.
That's their question, Nathan. Like, why is 2 adjournment and not for everything else? If it's an
Because state code says so.
But it said, the state code says a majority is required, but a majority of those present, not the typical majority of the full council.
But there's another code about adjournment, is my understanding.
Well,
Yes.
that's code section 10-3507. And if you look at subsection 11A, a motion to adjourn requires the city council to adjourn immediately to its next regularly scheduled meeting and requires less than a majority vote pursuant to 10-3507. That's the way it used to be. Right? But now, if you're going to adjourn to the next regularly scheduled meeting, you have to have a majority vote rather than a majority vote to suspend the meeting, less than a majority. So all we need to do is the city council to adjourn to its next regularly scheduled meeting requires a majority. We take out less than. Requires a majority vote pursuant to, and then we cross-reference the 10-3507. That's the fix. That's the amendment. Okay? So under subsection 11, non-debatable motions, you say, under the main paragraph, a majority vote is required to approve the motion. Okay? Motion to adjourn under A, a motion to adjourn requires the city council to adjourn immediately to its regularly scheduled meeting and requires a majority vote pursuant to 10-3507. Then it doesn't address the temporary adjournment because somebody doesn't feel well or they need a break. That can be less than a majority. Let's say you lost your quorum. Let's say one person stepped out of the room, but you still are going to have a meeting come back and you only have 3 in the room, just as Lucas was saying, then 2 can vote. We're going to adjourn here for 20 minutes till we get regrouped and then we'll come back. Clear?
It's mud, clear as mud. Ronnie?
So
Lisa, can I ask you a question? Because I went specifically online to look at state code and, it took me to the legislature's page and the code. And the version that was online when I looked was the old version, not this new one you're mentioning. So where should we as council members look to find updated stuff like that?
well, I'm as surprised as you are today when I opened it up. Although it's effective in 2023, which means it was May 3rd.
Okay, thanks.
So we just wasn't up, it wasn't published. In other words, it wasn't updated, but it's currently the law. So you pulled it up and I pulled it up and now we have the answer to
Okay.
the policy question.
Does that happen often that we go to look at state code and it's not updated, just so we know as council members or people running for office know? Yeah.
No, Ronnie, it's very unusual to have that happen.
Okay.
Unusual. And if it does happen like this, I would immediately call the legislature and say, hey guys, get it together because you haven't got this published. And it aches in their face. It's very unusual to have this happen.
Okay. When convenient, I have a few other places where your and the mayor's stuff conflicted whenever.
Okay.
So item 20 on page 10, I had asked, there's a reference to 2/3 of council. So obviously doing the math, 2/3 of 5 is 3.33. So I had asked, oh, okay, is that going to be 3 of us or 4 of us? Are you going to round? The mayor had directed me to section 12, but section 12 doesn't address that question. So Lisa's answer was it is 4 people. And so I just was going to ask, so do I go with 4?
You do go with 4. And the
Okay.
reason I said that, right? I think I told you, is to expel a member requires a supermajority vote. And 2/3 is sort of a term of art that you see in code when it's drafted. State constitutions, state legislatures, they'll say 2/3, which means a supermajority. Well, in this case, it would be 3.33, which means it would be 4.
Okay,
Means that the vast majority are upset enough about something, they're going to expel a member. That's a huge dramatic event to have happen. So yeah, a supermajority is a good idea.
okay, thanks for explaining that. I think all my other questions were not of conflict.
Good,
Right.
good.
Thanks, Ronnie. Okay, Lisa, could you review, and you guys, if you're not comfortable, I have no problem if you want to table this and get a clean, whatever you guys want to do. We've been working on this for a long time. Another week or 2 weeks is not gonna to be a problem. So, so Lisa, would you mind just kind of reviewing
I
the
think-
changes that we did recommend, that we made to the document that we are recommending that you consider for the document that you received in the email, in the packet?
Just so you know, they amount to maybe 10 words. All the changes, 10 words total, okay? So if you look at page 2, subsection 5B, there is a concern that Ronnie had that the city council can take final action on unscheduled matter and so forth, and they may ask questions, and then it says give directions to the mayor. The amendment would be to delete directions and insert recommendations. A city council member doesn't typically give directions to a mayor, and certainly not in an open meeting, but they may give recommendations. So that's the one change. At page 3, subsection 8F, this was one that Lucas raised, and I thought it was good. This deals with a second to a motion, identifying who it makes it is. If the second motion if this motion to second doesn't happen, then it's concluded without decision, and the city moves on to the next item. So in other words, I make a motion to do X, there's no second. You sit for 35 seconds, a minute, nothing happens. The mayor may say, we're moving on. There was no traction on this one. However, I think it would be wiser to say unless another motion is made. So at the end of that sentence, next agenda item, insert unless another motion is made. Okay? That addresses the issue. Now, Lucas wanted to know whether or not, what about reconsideration? The only time reconsideration of a vote is when there's been a vote. And if you've got a motion here that has no vote, there is no reconsideration that is applicable. So there's no needing amendment there. Then at page 4, subsection 9A and B, this is where we discussed before, Ronnie. I'm just going to re-letter subsections A and B to read L and M and insert those after K in subsection 8. So you have a new L and M under subsection 8, and then 9 remains the same. This is the way it reads. At page 4, subsection 9A and B, re-letter subsections A and B to read L and M, and after subsection 8K, transfer the content on agenda items being pulled to subsection 8. At page 5, subsection 10D, for consistency's sake, Ronnie wanted us to say motion to substitute, like we had motion to withdraw and motion to amend. Then I'm happy to make that amendment. More often than not, having served on the council for 3 terms now, I've never known anyone to say motion to substitute. I always just say, I'm going to make a substitute motion. So that's why that term was rather loose, but we can have it be motion to substitute. And within the body, it's referred to the same. At page 6, and then on page 5, we'll make the amendment to subsection 11. After motion, we'll take out that portion of the sentence. And in subsection A, we'll take out less than. So that's the new one. And then at page 6, subsection 12A, after among city council members, this is to address Lucas's concern. This is the best way to do this. It says, if the mayor pro tem votes and you have a tie, that mayor pro tem can't vote again as the city councilman. They don't get 2 votes, no 2 bites at the apple. So this is the way it's going to read. If there is a tie vote, when the mayor pro tem votes, the motion fails.
So this is where my reconsideration concern kind of re-arises. Because according to, as it's written right now, it says that only a city council member who is in the majority on a vote may make a motion to reconsider or rescind any action taken. If there's a tie, there's no majority. And so does that item like basically,
There's no reconsideration because the item failed. You reconsider when there's been a vote for something positive.
okay, so it's not just if a vote was taken, if it's like if a vote passed,
Yes.
even if it was like a negative or,
Correct.
Okay.
Good question.
Lisa, can I ask you a question about that? Because, I mean, maybe it was done wrong, but we've certainly had votes here in the past where, well, at least one I can think of, there might have been more than one, but where something did fail and we were told that we could reconsider it, but someone, so that's just counter to what we've been told in the past.
If the vote fails, it can't be officially reconsidered. What can happen is it died, right? The vote failed, but you and another city council member can go to the mayor and say, I'd like to put this on the agenda again. And if you
Okay,
request it, then what you have is the agenda item comes again on the agenda and at that point can be reconsidered. But it's really
okay.
a new item.
So what lingo should we use to refer to that scenario if it's not truly reconsideration? Just so we, yeah, just bring it, you can bring something back, basically,
We want
Yeah.
something on the
okay,
agenda.
revive something or who knows what, okay.
so I guess like my one example with this was with like Scott's on the Rocks, where they came with an application and we ultimately voted to deny the application, right? And that's why we were able to bring it back because there was a vote that passed to deny
Mhm.
the application.
Yeah, it didn't die,
Okay,
right? You did make a decision and then
Okay.
reconsidering the decision.
Okay, carry on, Lisa.
Okay. At page, let's see where I am. At page 8, subsection 16. It says here, it's just a little bit colloquial. It's about the discretion, as you know, that the mayor has. And I meant to do this up front. We don't have a rules of construction in this particular piece of legislation. May is permissive. May is discretionary. And shall is mandatory. So in this section, it says the mayor may announce the same rules of order and procedure that apply to a city council meeting that shall apply to a public hearing. Then it had said the mayor may see or the rules of order, procedure, and code for the public to attend the meeting. I changed that. The mayor may provide the rules of order and procedure and code. All right. Then page 9, subsection 17C. We're getting near the end, folks. Hang on. This was a concern for Lucas because it looked like there was a misalignment in case, plural versus singular. So I prefer not to use his or her name, and I prefer not to use their name because it is a misconception, their and names, plural and then singular. So what I have here is at C, page 9, subsection C, any person providing testimony will be requested to state the person's name and address, state clearly the person's position on the matter sought, rather than their and the. So it's just the person's is inserted. Okay, that's all that I have. And then, oh, I got one more that I remembered that I didn't put in, and this was one that you had mentioned, Ronnie, and that's at page 9, subsection 17A. No, page 8, subsection 17A. It would cause you some confusion that the public hearing, at the hearing, the applicant is provided with a copy of a staff report. And the way you read it, you thought it was only for during the duration of the meeting. So instead of saying provided with a copy of the staff report for a reasonable time, period of time, I'm going to say within a reasonable period of time prior to the public hearing. Okay?
Um,
So we
Yeah,
change,
I can just clarify if you like. Sorry, having studied language, I got kind of trained to look at different readings. So the way it was reading, potentially, you can read it different ways, but it was potentially reading that the person would be given the document to review for a set amount of time. Like maybe you give it to them for 4 days, and the implication could be that you take it back. So that was just what was problematic about that for.
want to avoid ambiguity in ordinances, and I think if we simply say within a reasonable period of time, that will make reference to the when the document is provided. Not for a period, but within a reasonable period of time. In other words,
Yeah,
prior
that's fine.
change. That's a good change. That's all of them.
You also had an opening paragraph for the, in the code of conduct.
Yeah. Did you want to discuss the code of conduct now? I didn't know if you're going to vote. If you wanted,
Well, I think the code of conduct is included in the resolution.
Yeah.
So we can talk about it now, and then we can discuss how the council wants to move forward with the amendments,
Mayor, I appreciate that.
which this would be one.
Yeah, there's only one. And in the beginning of the code of conduct, in the opening paragraph, it says the Moab City Council adopts a code of conduct for members of the city council, including the mayor and the Moab City's boards, committees, and commissions, to ensure public confidence in the integrity of local government and its effective, open, and fair operation. Then we add this: if there is any conflict between the rules of order and procedure of the city council and the planning commission, the city council's rules of order and procedure shall govern until such time as amended planning commission rules of order and procedure are adopted. Now, the reason that language is there is that we just discovered that the planning commission had attempted to make some amendments to their rules of order and procedure that were not completed in 2022. It's not something that I worked on, but it's clear that it's something that is being discussed and modified and worked on. So in the meantime, because code requires that you have working rules of order and procedure, we'll say the city council rules will govern until such time as the planning commission is happy with the rules that they want.
The only problem I have with that, Lisa, is that it's the rules, this is the rules of order, and so it's different than the code of conduct. So it just seems odd to include something about the rules of order in the code of conduct, but you guys can talk about that.
Yeah, well, when we were speaking about, and I thought the same thing too, when we were thinking about it earlier today, we thought, well, let's make sure, because it says regarding, let me find where it was important. It says,
The one thing that this may do is get the planning commission to move forward with rules of order, because I think a lot of these rules of order are going to be a little different for the planning commission.
Yeah.
So Mayor,
Yes.
what we had discussed before, what Carly and Lisa and I discussed this morning, as we were looking into this, is the planning commission has to have rules of order and procedure.
Right.
But their rules of order and procedure, as you said, are going to be a little bit different than yours. For instance, there's virtually no reason why a planning commission should ever go into a closed session, right? And so we don't really need to get into that, other than to say you really have to get a good reason to do this. But what we were discussing is you have two parts to this. You have rules of order and procedure, and you have rules of conduct that you are adopting for yourself. And so the question is, do the rules of conduct for the council apply to your other boards and committees? And so what we had discussed was maybe doing something along the lines of, these rules of order and procedure govern all city committees and boards. And if there's a conflict between whatever rules of conduct they have and what you've adopted, that your rules, which are general, would govern. Now, the draft rules of order and procedure that we saw for the planning commission do have some rules of conduct. They're a little bit more simplistic, I think, than what you're discussing here. And so it's not that they couldn't also apply, it's just they would be in addition to what you're requiring. So that's one concept that we discussed. Not so much that we would require the rules of order and procedure to apply, but we require the rules of conduct to apply.
That makes sense, Luke? Yeah. So basically by doing this, then it kind of makes sure our planning commission is in compliance with state code, essentially. And then this will just kind of hopefully get the planning commission to utilize these rules and modify them to fit what they actually do in their meetings. So that makes sense. Okay.
So-
And just to be clear, it's the council that has to approve rules of order and procedure for the planning commission.
Okay.
That'll have to come before you. Now, my understanding is they have rules of order and procedure. They were in the process of updating them. And so I think they are in compliance. They're just updating what they had.
So will it be kind of a situation kind of with like federal and state law where like we kind of pass this as the base, and if like the planning commission wanted to adopt additional ones, they have to be like more restrictive. They can't go outside of what's already prescribed within what we've adopted. Okay.
I think that's a good way of explaining it. They just, my point is they just can't be inconsistent.
Okay.
And so you guys are kind of providing the baseline. For instance, the state code provides the baseline of the ethics requirements that all public employees have to follow, but you can provide additional or more restrictive ones if you want. You just can't, you can't go below whatever the threshold that they've provided is. Like you can't say, hey, for instance, your rules of conduct, you can't have rules that say, hey, derogatory or accusatory speech is not permitted in an open and public meeting of a body of the city, and then have, and I'm not saying anyone would do this, but have rules of conduct from somewhere else that say we encourage people to berate others, right? So, I mean, that's not that that's going to happen, but that's just kind of the easy example to make. So I don't think, frankly, in reading the draft that they've been working on, that really there's much there that conflicts with what you have already. It's just a catch-all provision in case they do come up with something and there is a conflict, yours would govern. So that you are setting the tone at the top that the state auditor asks for from legislative and executive entities in public and in the public sector, that you guys set the tone. So we don't want to have you have a certain standard of conduct and then have the committees and other things that report to you have a lesser standard.
Great. Thank you for that clarification. Okay. So with all of that, we can table this item, and with the caveat, I would like to know that you're comfortable with the amendments that are presented if you prefer to table, or you can approve this with the recommended amendments to the resolution that's in your packet. Or you can take some or not. I mean, I'm not sure how you want to move forward. Ronnie.
I still have questions about the document, places that are unclear to me. So I would like an opportunity now or later to ask those.
Let's get a motion and then we can discuss.
So move to table this until the next meeting.
All right, we have a motion, and so do you accept the amendments? Are you
Oh,
tabling
I'm
it?
sorry.
You want to table it, which include for a clean draft that includes these amendments?
No, I just want to table this until the next meeting so that people can have their questions answered and be clear when it comes back to us.
All right, we have a motion to table. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Motion made by Tawny to table this until you can have your questions answered and be clear. Seconded by Ronnie. Any discussion, Tawny?
Nope.
Ronnie? Anybody else? I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Well, I guess we'll be talking about this again next time. And so Ronnie, for any of your clarifying questions, if you wouldn't mind emailing those to Lisa and I, and hopefully we can address those before the next meeting. You want this on the agenda for the next meeting? Okay.
Hey, Mayor,
Yes?
could I just make a request from our end that could we have a deadline by when we get the comments so we can make sure we address everything in time and have a clean draft that everyone can look at in enough time before the meeting?
That would be the best time would probably, I'm working back from when materials are due. By Monday, and then Nathan, could you turn around those questions by a Thursday morning deadline? Did you hear my question, Nathan?
I'm not sure. what you're saying, Carly.
So I was trying to think about when materials for the agenda are due. They're due Thursday morning, so not this Thursday, but the next. And I was thinking a Monday deadline for council feedback and questions. And then any adjustments could be, you would have 3 days to make those adjustments.
Oh, that's fine with me. If we get them by Monday, we can make sure that it's ready for the Thursday mailing packet. The other thing I'm going to do, if I'm understanding, in good faith, I've tried to address all the comments of Ronnie and Lucas. And so if you're comfortable, I'm going to create a new version
Mhm.
with these amendments.
Yes,
The clean copy that incorporates the 8 amendments and the code of conduct amendment, correct?
yes. And if you could do that as a red line so that we can see those changes, that would be great. And then any changes that come between now and then, we want to have them into staff by
By Monday. Let's do Monday now.
Monday at noon.
Thanks.
Yes, Ronnie.
Given that, some of us have been doing this for years or at least a little while, and we're pretty confused about parts of it. And if we don't understand it, the public's probably not going to understand it. I would ask that the remaining questions that I put out are on some kind of shared document that at least the council can see, but ideally the public in the packet afterwards, because it probably just helps everybody to understand why things are certain ways.
So you want your comments to be put in the packet for the mailing?
Well, if I just send my comments and questions to you, then the other council members don't get to see them. So they don't have the benefit of, they might still have some of the same questions or benefit from, like some of the explanations you did. People have already learned from, right? From questions that Kaylin and I had about, okay, why is it this way? Or questions that Luke had. So it's an educational benefit if we do this the way we did before on a shared Google document. So other people, if that, it might save you time in the next meeting if it drives another question from someone else that spins off that. You don't have to do it that way, but it's just beneficial for people to understand. Yeah.
What I'm happy to do is have all the amendments that come in and comments that come in. I will put those together and make sure every council member and the mayor sees all the comments that came in.
Okay, great. Thanks.
And then, but we don't need to put the comments in the packet with the finalized version, do we?
No,
That sounds like
no.
Normally, even at the state legislature, you don't put draft comments and an unfinished item into the public realm.
it's confusing.
That's fine.
All right, moving on. Thank you guys for your comments. I hope that we can get this taken care of at the next meeting, but just be assured, I will still run the meetings the way that I have for the last year and a half, even if we don't have these rules of order in place.
Thank you very much. I appreciate
Thank you, Lisa. Thanks so much. More to come. All right, next item on our agenda is David. And this should be hopefully a little easier. We have 2 items here that revolve around the same thing. Item 6.2 is the consideration of the adoption of resolution 2423, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Moab, Utah, authorizing the issuance and sale of not more than $4,500,000 aggregate principal amount of sales tax revenue bonds series 2023. And item 6.3, you'll have to vote on these separately, but the presentation is going to be for the same. 6.3, consideration of approval of the grant agreement between the City of Moab and Utah Department of Workforce Service for Cane Creek Boulevard Reconstruction Project.
Good evening. It's nice to be with you. Alex Buxton is also with us, the
Hi, Alex.
Zions Bank financial advisor. He's going to elbow me when I say something wrong. So it takes a village. Let me get this pulled up for you. Sharing the screen. There we are. Great, just a few short slides to help us move along. This, in other news, is a happy time in that for those of you who in the public may not have realized, the city received a combination of grant and loan funds from the Utah Permanent Community Impact Board back in June, I believe. And in order to actually receive the grant funds, you'll need to approve or authorize the mayor to sign the grant agreement. That's the second item. But the first item, which is a little more substantive, is the process by which we need to go through to authorize the process to receive funds through bonding, which then incurs debt to the city. So that's why we're mostly here tonight. As I said here, this grant was for 3.7 million approximately. The loan is for 4.2. The total estimated project, as you probably know, is about 8.8 million. The city will contribute the balance there of about $869,000. That'll come from a variety of the city's funds. It'll be allocated depending on how the project itself overall is allocated. So some will come out of water, some will come out of sewer, some will come out of the capital fund, and probably even some out of the stormwater fund based on the percentage, the proportion of the overall expense of the project that should be allocated to those funds. So what is a parameters resolution? This is really a overarching document that describes what the elements of the debt plan will be for the city for these bonds. And it takes into consideration what debt the city is in currently, and it takes in to consideration the city's debt capacity, and then it describes the outside parameters really of what could be authorized for the debt. Now, usually it involves a little more an outside parameter that we probably won't necessarily get right up against, but it tries to account for provide a little bit of flexibility in case there are some sort of unforeseen additional expenses that are required. But it does establish those parameters for the council to consider and approve. Here we're proposing a $4.5 million maximum loan, 18-year repayment schedule, and an interest rate not to exceed 2%. And those of you who are paying attention to interest rates out there in the world know that this is a screaming deal. And so city's pretty lucky to be able to get this, and that's a beautiful part of the CIB process. So, and then the last part that's really important is that the parameters resolution does authorize, basically delegates authority to the mayor and staff to finalize the issuance of bonds after this 30-day contest period goes forward. And that is actually a clarification that's a little bit different from what I put in the comments earlier today in the comments to council. There is not an additional step the council takes to formally approve these bonds. However, the council can, after the 30-day protest period happens and after this public hearing happens next month, the council can definitely say, hey, whoa, you know, we heard something that really compels us to not want to do this, so don't move forward. But presuming that doesn't happen, the council doesn't have to take any action for things to move forward, if that makes sense. And it's really the goal here is efficiency and to try to keep things moving along so we can stay on a schedule with getting bids out and opened and then get under construction. Alex?
Man, well, you could take my job.
No.
Decided you wanted to sell the bookstore and leave Moab, but I know nobody wants you to do that. I don't know that I have anything to add on these 2 or 3 slides. I think you've covered it. Calendar wise, well, you're going to go over the calendar now, so go through this one and then I'll see if I have some closing comments.
I have a question and a comment before we go on.
Sure.
For people who don't know, can you explain where CIB funds come from?
Would you
I
would
know
you like
where-
me to?
I know where
Would
they
you like
come
to?
Sure,
Mark, and then I'll
I've
add
worked with CIB
anything.
for a long time.
Okay.
They
Go
come
ahead,
from
go ahead.
mineral lease from oil and gas.
Yes.
And there's money that goes to the county from mineral lease and money that goes to the state. And they bank that in a bank, and then they provide loans to communities for impacts from oil and gas in their communities.
You nailed it. And let me make one additional comment to that. The majority of those mineral lease revenues that go into that pot of money comes from Uintah County
Right.
and Carbon County is a provider, Duchesne.
Cool.
Grand County provides very limited contribution to that fund. So when we talk about the $3.7 million grant almost equal to the $4.2 million very subsidized, low interest, 2% loan. As to use his word, you're getting a screaming deal, because the Uintah County folks and Duchesne and so forth, they're very protective of not only the overall pot, but the grant money is very hard to get. So once again, kudos to you as a city that was able to get almost half of your project with a grant, because that is very, very, very hard to do unless you're in that Uintah County, Uintah Basin area that provides the majority of the funding. So anyway, but you're right. That's where it comes from, and it's limited. I go to the monthly meetings, and I recently had a conversation with Candace Powers on a different applicant who's trying to get their money secured in October. You guys got yours secured in June, and the next cycle is in October. And she says there's more requests and more people that have been put, or cities and counties that have been put on the priority list than money available. So she said the reality is a lot of these folks that are on the priority list, unless a new influx of money comes, aren't even going to get their funds. So you guys don't have to worry about that. You've already been secured in the beginning of June. So anyway, kudos to the city for being able to secure that.
Yeah. Thank you. Just really quickly, in terms of what the next steps are, if you approve the resolution, the city will publish this notice for what's called a quote protest period unquote, and that's really a 30-day period for people to comment on this proposed approach to bonding and to debt. September 9th is when that would end. And then shortly thereafter, at the next council meeting after that, the council conducts a formal public hearing as well to give people another chance to comment. And then if at that point, that's when the council basically takes no action. If you're okay with moving forward, or if you wish to take action at that point, someone can make a motion accordingly. And then parallel with that, our that internal, as it were, city process will have a budget amendment proposed to you to bring those funds in from the various funds in the city for that 800 something thousand match. Now, real quick, sort of nuance to that is that the city has already spent, I believe, 350,000 or so on engineering and planning and development work that will go into this project. So we won't actually need to budget most likely for the entire 800 something thousand. We'll need to budget for the balance that remains. So that's what'll happen on the 12th, ideally. And then this is all in sight of getting construction bids in. And what happens is we need to wait till we get construction bids in before we actually close on the bonds, so that we know exactly how much we're going to be closing on, right? So if construction bids come in a little bit higher, we'll be able to adjust the amount of what it is that we're closing on. And then we close on the 29th, and then Chuck lets loose the hounds.
Great. So
Okay.
David, would we have to amend the budget at some point because of this? We were talking-
Precisely.
So we'll do that at the mid-year. right?
Correct. And we'll try to keep it as narrowly focused as possible on just this project for that amendment.
Oh, I see. That's up there. All right, questions? Ronnie?
I'll just repeat one. Thanks for answering my questions on the shared document. I just thought it might just help other people understand, as a municipality, blah, 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 blah.
They'll understand that
Municipality.
Very well.
Yeah. Technically only has so much bonding capacity. So just kind of for the layperson, can you just kind of in a sentence or two, just kind of say, oh yeah, we're still fine on bonding capacity, and just kind of
Sure.
repeat how where this leaves us.
Right. So actually, maybe I'll pass that
Yeah.
on to you as the absolute expert.
Sure. Appreciate the question. The limit as far as debt incurring capacity really ties to general obligation bonds, which this is not a GO bond. If it were, it would require the vote of the people, and you'd have to go through the election process and then issue that type of bond. This being a sales tax bond, there's no legal limit. However, the bond purchasers, in this case, it's the CIB who's buying the bond and providing you the funds. They all require, whether it's a bank, whether it's a CIB or so forth, they require a certain amount of coverage, meaning the revenues that's securing the bond, and in this case, it's the sales tax revenues, are able to be shown that they'll not only cover the debt, but cover the debt and then some, kind of a buffer. The general, kind of the general rule on that is 1.25 times coverage. So if a debt payment's 100,000, banks, CIB, whoever buys the bond wants to see that you have 125,000 available. We ran a coverage table, and I think, Randy, you received a copy of that table that we put together with, or maybe not. Oh, okay. But just to give you kind of an idea of where the city will now sit by way of coverage, because as you know, you've got a 2003 bond that was used, the sales tax was used to secure the bond. You've got a 2009 bond that was also used through sales tax. Now you've got a new proposed bond, 2023. With those three bonds, and assuming last year's sales tax numbers, which I believe they've gone up this year, but I didn't have access when I put this coverage table together. At its lowest point, the city would be just under 5 times coverage. So once again, kind of the floor being 1.25 times. You guys, when all three bonds are in full swing, goes down to about 4.92 times coverage. Once the 2003 bond gets paid off in 2033, that coverage jumps up to almost 6 times. Again, only assuming the current revenues that you're getting now. Moab, every year their sales tax goes up. So this is a very conservative estimate. I guess that's a long way of answering that you still have ample room for future sales tax bonds if at some point down the road the city decides to secure another financing with this source of revenue. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, thanks. I get forgetful about this stuff, so it just helps me. to repeat
Okay.
it.
So anyway, that I think, again, all of our estimates are very conservative here, but you've got ample room for future projects if you need to go this route.
Great. Questions? Motion?
I move to approve resolution 24-2023, authorize the issuance and sale of not more than 4.5 million aggregate principal amount of sales tax revenue bond series 2023.
Motion by Keeler, second.
Just a quick clarifying question. On the shared document, I asked if we had to read the longer resolution title. And I got the impression from David that we did need to.
I thought you said we didn't need
It's
to.
fine.
Okay,
Yeah, as long as it's referenced accordingly. yeah.
okay, I'll second then.
All right, motion by Kalen, seconded by Ronnie. Discussion, Kalen?
No.
Ronnie? Anybody else? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Do I have another motion on item 6.3, general business? They're looking to know what the motion is.
Oh. Just to really reiterate, this is the agreement with the Department of Workforce Services to
grant.
formally agree to receive the grant funds, and there's some detail in there around what we can and cannot do with those funds, but it's basically just the city formally agreeing to receive those funds, the grant side of the funds.
You can just read it off the agenda.
Is this one okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I will move to approve the grant agreement between the City of Moab and Utah Department of Workforce Services for the Cane Creek Boulevard Reconstruction Project.
Motion by Tawny, second,
I'll second.
second by Luke. Further discussion, Tawny?
Nope.
Luke? Anybody else? Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Okie dokie.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Looking forward to this starting happen. It looks like probably after the first of the year, huh, Chuck?
Yeah.
That's great, though. Good.
Everything's moving.
Yep.
I didn't get here early enough.
Oh,
Everybody.
Thanks, Alex. We're all gonna be high on sugar by the end of the night.
We don't want to leave out.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
No, she's
good
very
idea.
important. All right, moving on. Section 7 of the agenda, city manager updates.
All right, thanks, Mayor. A couple of personnel updates that I wanted to make you aware of. We're starting to interview for Parks Rec and Trails Director this week. Finance Director too, we have a couple of candidates coming in. I'm really optimistic about the Parks Rec and Trails Director. We have some excellent candidates. I hope to make an offer by the end of the week. It's, we'll see how it kind of goes, but that might be great to have that filled. Annie's been kind enough to keep a lot of things moving. She's available to onboard the next person too. So really encouraging there. Finance Director has been harder to recruit for. It's an unusual skill set especially for public finance. I wanted to let you know, just a reminder that I got from Jeremy Spalding from the school district that there's the back to school clap-in. It's next week, next Wednesday, August 16th. That's the first day at school. So it's 7:20 to 7:45 for the middle school and high school, and then 7:50 to 8:15 at HMK. And I know that they would love to see it and you wanted to come out
And clap.
and clap and just, bring the students back. Just an update on the development of the Moab Area Housing Plan. So the Moab Area Housing Task Force has been working to develop that for the past few months. They've done really good work. It will be coming to council kind of in the next couple of months. Michael and I have been participating in the drafting of that. Michael's going to attend another meeting tomorrow where they're kind of getting through the other half of the plan. We made it through one half. But just letting you know that is in development, and then I think that task force will be coming to you with their findings, their recommendations, and we'll be prepared to kind of talk about our recommendations as well.
Can I
Yes.
ask a question about
Yeah,
that?
of course.
Last time we adopted it as an addendum to the general plan, and as such, I think it has to go to planning commission. first.
Okay.
If I'm correct, and that's the intention this time.
Yeah.
And not that it wouldn't hurt to take it to council, like in the whole introduction to
Sure.
the city, but
I wasn't aware that it was part of the general plan. There's a desire to, I mean, it's already been part of it, so you would want to go back and reopen it. Is that a process you guys are interested in? I guess is my question. It's very transparent and public, so I like it for that reason.
right, does it give it more force because it gives us more, if we're referencing it in terms of adopting other policy, is it better if it's part of the general plan?
It seems more consistent. I like that. They're all basically one document instead of competing documents. Very easy to do. I do like that process. And I'd like to get the planning commission's input, actually,
Right.
now that you mentioned it. We can do that. I like it. Sound
Do you-
good, Michael?
Do you want to get input from the council before it goes to planning commission?
I think we're discussing tomorrow the goals that are set. So a lot of the document is simply data, right? And how they're characterizing the data. And then there is the development of like goals and like strategy. And I think we wanted to talk with the group about how like the initial draft goals were brought about. If we want to get that in front of council first, before they're finalized, before they go to planning commission, just so there's an alignment going into the development of it. But Caitlin's on that, and I'm sure they'd be open to it.
I think having a presentation.
Yeah, yep,
Mhm.
that's what I was thinking.
And just
then
making sure
some
you're kind of
direction.
good with goals and before they settle too much and get congealed into action.
And probably alignment with the county as well, since it's.
Right. Joint,
So it's a joint document. Yeah.
okay, I'd like that.
Yeah, good feedback. Thanks for that, Keelan. The last of the 3 concert series will be taking place August 18th at Swanee Park. And I wanted to make you aware, which is my favorite of it. So I said that it's ending, the summer's already over. Cora asked me to just let people know that there's going to be a hard closure of the LaSalle Loop Road, August 14th to the 17th, and August 21st to the 24th. You know more about this, Nandu Tani. That's from Castle Valley up to Miners Basin. They're chip sealing it. Is that right? So August 14th through 17th, 21st and 24th.
That's just the loop road.
Yeah, it's the loop road from Castle Valley to Miners Basin.
Will be open on the weekends.
It'll be open on weekends nights. Okay. And I think it's just during the day.
It is just,
Yeah.
so will Willow Basin have access?
I don't know.
Probably not.
I don't know where those things.
Yeah, I would
Start and
I
end.
don't know. I'm trying to, I think Myers Basin is. I don't know if we're gonna be able to cut through.
Well, that, well, when you say Castle Valley to Miners Basin, that's Castle Valley,
It's
but if
not-
it's, if it's just the loop road,
It's
that's
the,
like
it's the
Gateway Road.
intersection from Gateway.
All right.
Yeah, it's not Castle Valley.
It's not Castle, okay. And on the topic of Cora, and the county, I just want to let you guys know that I think there was a flood warning. I wasn't in Tetons, but a flood warning last week, last Thursday, Friday.
Yep.
And we all got a little buzz from Cora, this like group signal chat about like preparations and kind of activating the whole team. So it's really much more functional this year than last year. So it was kind of encouraging that she had marshaled the troops and resources pretty quickly. Hopefully we just will still, some of our good luck so far will play out for the whole summer. And we're organizing an Emmett Boulevard ribbon cutting. I was hoping to have like a date for you guys to announce, but that'll be in the next few weeks. Emmett Boulevard is completed and we just want to have like a nice ceremony. We had the scissors, so we have to use
Big set of scissors.
Yeah.
The heaviest scissors ever.
Yeah. And that's all I had for
Okay, it's great.
reports.
Thanks. Jason from Lagoon.
From the parking lot of Lagoon.
Jason,
Sorry,
did you go on Cannibal? That's my favorite.
I want
All
to
right,
cannibal
so this
when I'm
is
wicked.
mayor and council
Yeah.
reports to section 8
Yeah.
of the agenda. That's part of the rules, so I'm trying to follow the rules. You
Yeah.
guys
So I
have-
apologize I couldn't be there, but I fear my wife more than I fear any of you. And as we're taking the kids someplace, My last 2 weeks have been pretty slow. The meeting that I did attend that I thought was really great, I want to thank Ronnie and Trish for putting it on, was the Waterworks 101 that was put on up at the USU campus. And I attended that and it was very well attended. There was probably, I don't know if Ronnie counted or had, but I imagine there was probably over 50 people there. Plus, you know, I heard a lot of people that were on YouTube that I talked to who were watching it. And it was a great, like the title of it, it was 101, you know, and it was very good just to hear about where our water comes from, you know, how long it takes to percolate into, you know, the water table, you know, and to become usable. And it really did lay the groundwork for, you know, for educating people on where our water comes from. So I thought that was excellent. Great presenters, and I'm looking forward to the next ones that they put out. And that was I had meetings with the mayor last week. It's great, which probably the same things that we all talked about. And that's basically my report for, you know, for this week.
Do you know the date of the next water workshop?
I don't know if they have it set yet.
Okay.
But-
I think there's, I'm not quite sure exactly, Ronnie, you may know what the title is, but there's also a section that I think one of the third ones I think is going to be utility providers, as I heard Trish say that, which would be an interesting discussion for the community to understand too, how that process works. So not only do we learn about the water, but we learn how we get the water. So I think that that'd be very informative. All right, Jason, thanks.
Yeah.
Connie.
I didn't have a lot. Mine are all next week and the end of this week. Did have a meeting with the mayor last week. It was pretty productive. And I think that's about it.
All right, Ronnie.
Let's see. Yes, also attended the Water 101 presentation. The county has posted a recording, so people can go there to listen to the whole thing. And I know some of the questions in the question and answer session, because a big part of the group's approach to this is allowing ample time for questions and answers, both from people online and in the room. Some of the questions were about gray water. So I just wanted to thank Alexi for providing some information after the fact about where people can go to find information about that. The dates are not set for the next two, but we'll let you guys know when that's happening. The third one may become a fourth one. So I'm not totally sure that providers will be in the third slot, but we'll let you guys know as we find out. There was a rather productive. I mean, they're not always productive, but longer things to report from the August 3rd Grand Water and Sewer Service Agency meeting. Just in case people don't know, they do make annual bond payments for the wastewater treatment plant from their end. And they just reported that they made their annual payment of $102,000, in case that's of interest. Ben Musselman, the manager, reported that he's been working with Chuck on the interconnect between the city and GWISA, and they have identified 3 locations they're trying to decide between. They all have kind of pros and cons and different costs associated. So next, the city will send price information to GWISA. Together, Ben Musselman and Chuck will make a joint decision about which of those locations to go with. My understanding is the first one would be at Spanish Valley Drive and Spanish Trail. The second would involve equipping an existing well on the East Bench. And the third would be closer to town. Other than that, there was a mention, this might be of interest to people, although it's not within city limits, it might affect people you know. There was some discussion about the fact that Thompson has contacted GWISA as they are looking for funds to create a 280 acre foot reservoir. And there's been some talk about looking into a water right from Flaming Gorge. If people have questions, it's probably best to go to Ben Musselman at GWISA or Jacques Hodler, the chair of the county commission, is the Thompson rep for all that. Apparently the district is struggling a bit. So one idea has been that they actually officially come into GWISA's service area. Let's see, Ben did mention he's been working with Jenna at the county planning and zoning to talk about the sod buyback ordinance. And Ben's been looking into language on backflow prevention and just hoping that they'll be able to get some people to install those. And he said they're pretty much following along with what the city is doing. We had talked previously about the Grand County Water Conservancy District having an open seat, and there being some question about whether the district itself would officially send their 3 recommended names up to the governor, or whether they would send names to the Grand County Commission. Commission would then, discuss that and send it up to the governor. There appears to still be a little bit of disagreement there. What I understand is that the county commission has asked for all of that 8 applications that were received, or 8 or 9. I guess there's some disagreement about that too. So that when they have their meeting, their commission can review all of those. And it was the impression of the district that they really just need to send their 3 recommendations. So discussion is going on, I guess, between the district and the commission about that. Last few things, in case any of this helps you guys, GWISA has hired a new agency operations assistant, which is Josh Green, who many of you may know because he was formerly the code enforcement staffer at the county. I don't think he's doing both jobs, so nobody said anything about that. So I think he's left the county. Finally, Dale Weiss continues to work with Arnie Holtquist from the Moab Area Watershed Partnership on seeking grant funding from the Bureau of Reclamation. And they may work with our federal representatives on some support for that. Let me just see, that's probably just about everything. Along with that, sorry, this computer keeps asking me for a login again, so anybody can look at the video and find out my login. Let's see. And the only other thing was I was going to make an added push, since we have been trying to help out Grand County disaster, the emergency management department through the sheriff's office with communication. So they do have a Grand County disaster preparedness and mitigation questionnaire out now for the community. So you can go onto Facebook to the Grand County Office of Emergency Management page, or you can contact me or the address if you just want to do the questionnaire, which apparently takes 12 minutes, but they really want input from residents about how they can better serve people and prepare people for disasters. So please, as residents, take advantage of that. The address seems to be pretty simple: http://prepare.community/grand. So, but feel free to email if you need that. I think that's it.
Thanks, Ronnie. Luke.
I don't have too much. A bunch of my meetings have been canceled. Yeah, I attended the most recent free music concert series. It was a great time. Also attended the Water 101 workshop that I attended via Zoom. I didn't realize the turnout was quite as significant as it was. Really excited to hear that and kind of the continued interest from the community members regarding our learning more about our water situation, and then met with the mayor last week. But other than that, not too much.
Kaylin?
I attended the Community Renewable Energy Agency board meeting. The agency has been engaged with a public relations firm, and so it has been portraying itself informally as Utah 100 communities, and they did a whole inventory of the outreach and so their informal name has been changed to Utah Renewable Communities, so it's more descriptive. And then the tagline is 100% committed to clean energy. So hopefully that's clear. They've adopted a new we've adopted a new logo, which is also more illustrative. They've also worked on a new newsletter template and website revamp. So hopefully our messaging will be clear, and we'll be working on content on that as well in the upcoming months. That's what I've got.
Great, thank you. I have nothing to report. I was out most of July hanging out with a bunch of moose up in Big Cottonwood Canyon. So that's all I have to talk about. And so with that, we have 2 executive sessions this evening. So what we're gonna have to do is go, we would like to do the discussion of sale of real property. Executive session number 9.2 first. So if I could ask for a motion to go into executive session, strategy session to discuss the sale of real property. We'll have to come out of that executive session and then go back into the litigation. So if I could have a motion.
I will move to go into executive session to discuss the sale of real property.
All right, we have a motion made by Tawny,
Second.
second by Keelan. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5-0, motion
Quick
passes.
question, Mayor. Did I read the new procedures properly? I know we haven't approved them, but do we need to do that as a roll call vote? Like,
You know what?
seems-
I don't
yeah.
know. I'll have to look, but we don't have those rules yet. So tonight we don't. All right,